normal. Hopefully we'll get a few more joining in shortly. Okay, so tonight we have two guest speakers. Chase Petrovic from OMB. He's been working for OMB for over 10 years. And his subject matter tonight is going to be Pilsners, and in particular German Pilsners, and then a deep dive into the Captain Jack Pilsner. And our second guest, which he did confirm he was going to be on here today, is John Moorhead from the American Homebrew Association. He's a competition manager and the government affairs specialist. His subject will be the history and current state of homebrewing, and then a quick tutorial and a quick guide over the AHA web page. So we'll pass it over to Chase. I think you're going to share the screen, Brad, for Chase.
Okay. So yeah, I'm not sure how do you operate any of the graphics that I gave you.
I got it.
There you go.
It worked.
How's that?
Okay. So Brad, you're operating that?
Just tell me next.
Okay. That's cool. All right. Hey everybody. Glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me, Mark. You know, get me out of my comfort zone a little bit and talk to the homebrewers, the guys who brew the beer, because I identify with you guys a lot more than I do most of the people in the business. But I wasn't even a homebrewer when I started, so let's just get on with it. So yeah, let's start with the slides, I guess, and get started. Are we on the slides yet?
Can you?
Yeah, you should have the second slide up now.
Well, I can't see it. Anyway, yeah, so I've been working with OMB 10 years and learned 90% of everything from brewing about brewing from OMB, and then the rest of it from home brewing and trying my best at home to replicate it. So yeah, we won awards with OMB making good beer, and now we're just trying to continue making good beer, even in 2020.
Can you see the slides, Chase?
No, I cannot, but that's all right.
You probably want to be able to see those to work through all the information.
Okay. All right, there it is.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, at OMB, we apply the Reinheitsgebot to all our beers. We only use 4 ingredients, and we're pretty strict about it until John changes his mind. But yeah, it's all malt, malted barley, malted wheat. Eventually, we'll get some rye into the mix, hops, yeast, and water. And next. We just released our Mechtoberfest at OMB. It's won a couple of awards, and it's drinking mighty fine this year. I don't know if y'all have had it this year, but it's drinking pretty nice.
It's good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree.
Fat Boy as well. That's a personal favorite of mine, and I was glad to see that got to bring home a gold medal from Europe. Okay. Hornet's Nest as well, another strong representation of OMB. Now we just need to get the copper a medal of some sort so John can be happy. And Captain Jack, the black sheep, but I think it's probably our best beer that we produce when it is done right. And that is many of the subject matter we're going to talk about tonight, and just getting this done correctly all the time. And that starts with consistency, and that's where we start. And consistency is all about attention to detail every day, all day long, doing it over and over again. we can just skip that. Those are just style guidelines for Czech Pilsners and German Pilsners and how they differ. So this is our Captain Jack. It is, it's a German Pilsner, 4.8%, SRM of 3.2, IBUs 25. You really only get a good bit of hops on the back end, a slight bit up front, but it's pretty clean until the back end, and then you get a nice bit of hops that resonate on the palate. But otherwise, it is not hoppy whatsoever compared to some other German Pilsners today, and even Czech Pilsners today. I've had a Czech Pilsner recently that was like 40 IBUs, and I was like, okay, it was good, but a bit hoppy. All right. I made up a clone, a Captain Jack clone for you guys to enjoy and just see exactly the ingredients that we do use and how to replicate it and whatnot. So it's pretty basic recipe. German Pilsner malt, acid malt, just a little bit, Hercules hops, and 2 additions of Sapphire at the end. With
Just 1 second. Can everybody make sure they're on mute? We're getting a lot of feedback into the conversation, please.
Good.
Thanks.
So I'm sure Mark will give that out to anyone who's interested, and if you want to give me a bottle of it, I would love to try it. That would be great. The ABV is a little bit low with the recipe I gave. I'm sure that just has to do with the efficiency of the system. So yeah, you guys can retrofit it however you like. Just add a little bit more Pilsner malt. All right. So yeah, consistency. Everything starts with making sure that we're going over everything in detail. The point of the quality control is crucial for Pilsners because I consider it's a naked beer. It's fully exposed. You can't hide behind anything. What you see is what you get, and what you taste it better be good because otherwise you are going to be able to tell if there's any defects or off flavors with this beer being so clean. And that is why I really took on coming to talk to you guys about this, because after our brewmaster Dave Martin left in February this year for Alaskan Brewing Company, we were kind of just like left without a scientist in the lab. So, but that was a good thing actually, because we just kind of reverted back to some of our old ways before all this. So we stopped propagating yeast because we were having lots of issues with propagated yeast, and then just moved straight to yeast from BSG with the Weihenstephan 3470 German lager yeast. And we've had much better consistency with the fresh yeast we've been using. And I'm just happy to have a good Pilsner back on tap, because it really hasn't been, I don't know if anyone's had it over the past 2 years, but if you weren't happy with it, I understand, because I wasn't happy with it either. And we have done our best to make sure we brought it back to its glory. So I really hope you guys are enjoying it nowadays if you've had it recently, because it's much better than it was. All right. Freshness. Freshness is key for a Pilsner, and with most beers, IPAs, anything where the hops are going to fade, you're going to be able to tell. With the Pilsner, you really have, with it being such a light style of beer, you really have just a week or two before the hops start to fade and a bit of staleness might start coming through. But that's something that I have to worry about. You guys don't have to worry about it. You guys are drinking your own supply. You guys are good. But yeah, time is always a factor when it comes to beer, as we all know. And some of the differences between the Czech Pils and the German Pils, the classic styles, essentially is nothing. The recipe was exactly the same when Joseph Grohl brought back his recipe that he brought to Old Moravia. And after he invented the style in the Czech Republic area, brought it back to Germany, didn't change anything about it, except the difference was the brewing water. The brewing water in, let's say, Munich is much more hard than the water in Pilsen, Czech Republic, which is where he was brewing that at the time. And Pilsen actually has very soft water, which doesn't really highlight the hops as much. So it seems a bit more clean. And the water hardness in the German region of Germany was a lot more full of minerals. And what those minerals do when they attach with the hops in the final product of the beer is it acts like a backbone of a slight backbone of astringency that just matches with the hops bitterness and just gives you more of a pronounced hoppy bitterness in general. So altogether, there is no major difference between the two styles originally, and now it's mostly just everyone just puts lots of hops in all these beers. I don't mind them. I do like hoppy Czech pills, and I do like a hoppy German pills, but who doesn't like a Bitburger? It's not as hoppy, and who doesn't like a Rotterburger? Just something clean drinking that you can just, pound them all day. Let me see. Charlotte's water is much more close to the style of Pilsens because of the clay around the region. It doesn't allow as many minerals into the water source. So we actually live in part of the U.S. where we have soft water, and only 15% of the U.S. actually has soft water as well. So for home brewing, that works really well, and makes for nice beers. Okay, Brad. Yeah, again, these are just the basic ingredients that we use in the Captain Jack. Okay, Brad. Thank you. I wanted to go over with just the brewing process in general. It's basically the same with all of our beers at OMB. Excuse me. So everything except for copper gets mashed in at 40 degrees C, which is 104 degrees Fahrenheit. Basically just an acid rest to start. And the mash in process takes about 40 minutes, 30 to 40 minutes, depending. And then the protein rest after that, we raise it to 50 degrees C, and we hold it there for about 20 minutes. After the protein rest, we take it and bump it up to 63 at the beta amylase rest and start starch conversions. But also after we do get everything to 63C, we also separate 75% of the main mash and decoct the first 25% and boil that for 10 minutes. And then after we do that, we put everything back together and have a nice decocted mash, which is going to give us a nice head retention on our beers, a nice body, good flavor. And even for the Pilsner, it does wonders. So after that, after the decoction, we bump the temperature up one more time to our second rest, our alpha rest, at 72, and it sits there for a half hour. And then after that, we mash it out at 78 degrees. And then we start the ladder. The laddering process on our system takes about 2.5 hours, I'd say, sparging and all. And then after that, we check our gravity, make sure we're good to go. And with the Braucon system, it's pretty much, good to go. Don't really have to mess with the computer system too much to change anything. Once it's good to go, it is. So we have an 80-minute boil, and then the first addition is Hercules hops after 5 minutes, and then we do a bit of sapphire at the end of the boil, and then a bit more sapphire into the whirlpool to try and give it that back end hoppiness that we like. It's really good. The Plato finishes at 11.3 or 1045 original gravity, and we try and finish it to Plato. Sometimes we get a little lower than that to dry it out a little bit, but we always finish around 4.9% or 5%.
Hey Chase, how long do you sit at mash out at that 172?
The 72 rest, 30 minutes.
The 78. See.
Oh, the 78. We just bring it up to 78. Our mash tun has the heating jackets on it, and our ladder tun does not. So everything gets heated up in the mash tun, and then it gets put into the ladder tun after it reaches temperature. And then at that point, then we boil off for 15 minutes, and it pretty much sits at 78 until we start laddering.
Okay.
Is that mash out at the 172 for protein and head retention?
The mash out, it's just to help with laddering. It'll allow the flow of the wort to go a lot quicker, because you're basically telling all the enzymes to stop working at that point, so they stop getting gummy and they stop getting sticky.
Yeah, we had Brian Quinn gave a presentation, and with most of his beers, after he's done the initial mash out, he raises the temperature about 170 degrees for about 30 to 40 minutes to maximize the protein and get head retention. And I've done, since he actually gave us that tip, I've done all of my beers that way. And the head retention, because of the proteins which are extracted, I guess, has been really good. I'm really, really pleased with that additional mash out.
Really? Excellent. Well, I think our efficiencies are in the high 90s, so I don't think we're going to be messing around with anything. Thank you, Brad.
That's better than my efficiency.
What did Joe Dom say he got? Like, he said he got like a 96 all one time, and I'm like, are you crazy?
I call bullshit on Joe Dom.
Yeah, he bullshits. All right, the cold side. That's where I spend most of my time in the cellar. We chill the wort down to 11 degrees and pitch our valued amount of 3470 German lager yeast. And then after temperatures set and everything's in, we allow the temperature to raise, and it usually raises over the next 24 hours to 14 degrees C. And that's where it'll ferment until we start to slowly cool it. And we slow cool once it hits about halfway through fermentation. So we do slow cooling, and we also do we naturally carbonate our beers. So we bung up the tanks, and we stop any CO2 from escaping, and we hold that CO2 in to carbonate the beer for us. And we also, as we're doing that, we're going to start slow cooling. Now, next one, Brad. Now the slow cooling, it's definitely going back to the old ways. As I said, after Dave Martin, our brewmaster, left, John converted back to the old ways of how we used to run the cellar. And the way we do that, instead of just allowing beer to ferment and then crashing it and then just having it is what it is, or even doing a diacetyl rest, which we had been doing prior, and having a couple of variances here and there, some with diacetyl, some without, even with the rest. Excuse me. But with slow cooling, we're basically cooling a degree a day to start, and we're still allowing the beer to ferment. It's cooling it, but it's still allowing the yeast to stay in suspension. And as we go down a degree a day to 2 degrees a day, depending on how fast the fermentation is moving, we're going to be allowing the yeast to stay in suspension as long as possible to clean up any acetolactate that had turned into diacetyl. And the yeast that eventually falls after a longer period of time, it's going to clean up any of that diacetyl up. And we've had a bit more success with that than we have with the diacetyl rest in the past. So it's been working really well for us. Okay. Common off flavors, especially for Captain Jack, it's mainly diacetyl. But every once in a while, you can get a little acetaldehyde, the green apple flavor. DMS is something that we take care of in the boil. We have a calandria with a China hat in the boil kettle. And when we got the system, it threw everything I knew about not aerating the wort when it's hot. Because I heard if you do that, it's going to oxidize it and it'll be stale. Now we oxidize the shit out of it. We basically pump it into the China hat and it's just overflowing with foam. Now, what that's doing is actually releasing the DMS, and it gets put up with the condensate from the steam and rejected onto the floor. So it's something that's still getting used to, but it works. So we don't have any DMS issues. And oxidation, the stale cardboard flavor as well, is something that you're gonna taste with the Pilsner as it ages for sure. This is just a bit of the water hardness table. I looked up a couple things on Charlotte, Pilsen, and Munich. Now, Charlotte's water hardness is around 32 parts per billion. If you look to the far right in parts per million, Charlotte's at 32, so that's pretty soft. And the scale for water hardness in Europe is millimoles, I think it is, millimoles per liter. But I saw too many different equations to figure out exactly how hard their water is. But I assume that Pilsen is a lot closer to Charlotte than Charlotte is to Munich. And I saw something that Munich was in the 200 parts per million range. So if you're looking to make a Czech Pilsner in Charlotte, we got the water to do it.
This is our water down here for Upsy's land.
Okay. Yeah, 31. Very cool. Well, thank you. All right. And other than that, that's the bulk of my presentation. There's just a couple of examples here at the end. John actually based Captain Jack roughly off of Radeberger, his favorite German Pilsner. And everyone likes a Bitburger. And this was the Czech Pils I had the other day. That it was pretty hoppy, but I liked it. It was nice. From Resident Culture. Pills don't pay the bills.
Is that pretty much true? Do you know your volumes there at OMB? Is Captain Jack on the low end of sales?
It's good in the summertime. It's definitely, once Fest comes out, it kind of takes a hit. But yeah, the spring and summer does really well. And yeah, of course, the Pivo from Firestone. I was actually at GABF when they won gold for their Pivo. They also won like best medium-sized brewery as well. But I got to try it when they were there, and it says 40 IBUs, and it definitely tastes like 50 or 60. Yeah, very, very hoppy, but very good, very good. So, and yeah, that's it. if anyone has any questions, I'm all ears.
Yeah, feel free to take yourselves off mute, folks, if you've got questions.
Yeah, there's a couple of questions on the chat. You know, Adrian's got one about how long do you ferment Captain Jack and how long do you let it lager?
The fermentation, roughly about 7 to 8 days. And then we let it lager. We let Copper lager for 2.5 weeks. We let the Captain Jack lager for 4 weeks. We let the Mecklenburger lager for 4 weeks. But then like Mechtoberfest and everything else is about 3 weeks. 704 is 1 week.
Are you using all dry yeast?
We're using dry yeast for the 3470, but yeah, we get liquid yeast from White Labs for the 029 and the 300.
Oh, that's right. Copper's Kolsch, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Chase, just one question. You know, when you sort of read about the grains, you know, and you do the decoction mashing on this particular beer,
Mm-hmm.
you know, quite a bit of stuff you read says, you know, due to the modification, you know, the advantage of decoction is not necessarily beneficial. But you use the decoction for this particular beer.
Yeah, we do. John likes it mostly for nostalgic reasons and just doing things the old ways. I think that's the main reason why we do it, but he also still believes, I mean, you can go to our tap room and you see all of our beers with thick, fluffy white heads and, you know, just very appetizing, good looking beers. And I'll believe that decoction has a lot to do with that, because we're doing all the steps necessary to get everything we can out of the malt, and decoction is just another part of the process.
Okay. I'll definitely try that recipe.
Okay.
Okay, so that is exactly your 30 minutes, Chase. Exactly what you wanted to perform to. So, you know, spot on, my friend.
Excellent. Well, if there are no other questions, then
Thanks, Chase.
I'll say cheers.
Yeah, thanks, Chase.
Hey, thank you guys.
Yeah, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Okay, very good.
Thanks.
Interesting.
See you around.
Yeah, thanks, my friend. Okay, so the our next speaker tonight is John Moorhead, as I mentioned earlier, from the American Homebrew Association, the competition manager and the government affairs specialist. And John is going to talk a little bit about the history and current state of home brewing, and then a quick tutorial and a guide around the AHA webpage. So I see you're on, John. So do you want us to share a screen with you? Do you have a presentation, or is?
I do have a presentation. Should I share it, or do I need to?
No, if you're happy to go through it, Brad will assign you the screen.
Ultimate power.
Bam.
Awesome.
While you're doing that, I'm just going to get another quick Captain Jack.
Yeah. Do your thing. Thanks for the kind intro. All right. How's everyone doing tonight?
Good.
Nice.
Favorite Tuesday of the month.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me out here, or on here. Not out, but at least not yet.
Virtually out.
Yeah. Do we have both clubs on, or did we get the Carolina Brewmasters on as well?
Yeah, I see Tom's on. I saw a couple other guys on, so I think we've got a few folks from CBM and
Cool.
a bunch from Upsies.
Nice. Should I get started or should I wait for Mark?
Yeah, he can catch up.
Okay. Sorry, Mark. All right, cool. As Mark mentioned kindly, I'm with the American Homebrewers Association, competition manager with them, and also work on government affairs regarding homebrewing specifically. Most of the issues I deal with are state related, and then also have slowly worked my way into federal affairs, since we have a federal affairs director and in-house counsel with the Brewers Association. So I'm going to go over some very brief homebrewing history. We're kind of updating a bunch of information right now regarding kind of founding fathers' relation to homebrewing, and then kind of get into the start of the AHA, and then go through some things with the AHA, and then a few other things with the AHA just in general, and then I can also answer any questions as this comes up, and I might have the answer, I might not, and it can be related to anything I'm talking about or something that I might not be bringing up. So whether that's events that we're doing or the current state of the AHA moving forward, based on a bunch of changes that happened this year. Happy to talk and answer any questions. So feel free to interrupt me as I'm going through. It's definitely a lot more fun to have a conversation rather than just fly through a PowerPoint. So great. Basically just went over what I'm going to go through, so not going to spend too much time on this slide, but wanted to mention that anyone who's an AHA member, thank you. And anyone who's not, maybe you'll join after this meeting or down the road. For either way, there's a small discount that you could use because you guys are in the insurance program and giving the presentation. There's Club 5 off, which is a $5 off any membership with the AHA that would go for renewing or new. And I would recommend, if the clubs on here have a referral link, but I would recommend going through that link as well, so the clubs get a kickback on any membership generated. So see if I can move my screen kind of off so you guys can see everything. A little bit about the AHA. We're in Boulder, and we're a not-for-profit association, so 501c6, similar to a 501c3. Founded in 1978 by Charlie Mattson and Charlie Papazian, and have since grown to 42,000 members worldwide. About 10% of that membership is international at the moment. And a few major things that we do that you might be familiar with are we publish Zymergy magazine 6 times a year. That's on the left-hand side there. We host HomebrewCon every year, traveling conference, coolest homebrewing event in the world, with 3,000 of our members coming together for 3 days, 60,000+ seminars normally, bunch of events happening on and off the premise, as well as the National Homebrew Competition's final round that takes place there, as well as first rounds that happen across the country. That's what I primarily run as far as the competition manager is concerned, as well as help with operations and logistics on Great American Beer Festival competition and World Beer Cup, as well as competition that we run in Washington, D.C. for members of Congress. And then AHA member deals. Find these at any brewery across the country. We have an app, Brew Guru, that you can find any member deal on. Obviously more concentrated in an urban area, and hopefully some adaptation has been going on with those during the last 6 months or so, and eventually we'll get back to normal and we can start taking advantage of those deals that any AHA member can take advantage of. All right, so colonial America, first known example of brewing in colonial America in 1584 in Virginia. There's a photo of that on the right-hand side there. That's the original brew house. And now there's a book called Beer in America that does a good job of tying beer into way of life and the major historical events that take place. It's, you know, I'm a history major. I find the narrative interesting, and you know, stretches in some places, so it's kind of creative nonfiction, but it's a cool way to weave the fabric of the history of our country, you know, at least dating back to the 16th century up through the 19th century. You know, a reason, I wouldn't say the reason the Mayflower landed on Plymouth Rock was they needed beer. That was just a reason. You know, they couldn't drink water back then as often as and easily as we can now. The sanitation of that water was questionable at best. So beer was a safe alternative to drinking water that, you know, was seen as had somewhat nutritional value as well as somewhat of a hydrating value. And, you know, we're thinking beer in low percentage here, and low IBU as well. So think, you know, 3%, 4% at most, and low IBU. So sessional beer for sure. Wasn't going to spend too much time on that, but you know, we're all familiar with 1919 and Prohibition, outlawing manufacturing and distributing any kind of alcohol in the United States. Really destroyed a lot of that early brewing history that was created in the 16th, 17th, and 18th century and 19th centuries. It was only recently that we passed the record amount of breweries in the United States. I think in 1872, there were somewhere around 5,500, 6,000 breweries in the United States. That kind of remained steady up until Prohibition. And then you saw a lot of breweries go out of business. You know, these were a lot of brew pubs that we have around today that just had to stop. Some did survive and transitioned into making other beverages. And yeah, that was a pretty dark, depressing time for beer drinking. That lasted for 14 years up until Prohibition ending in 1933 with the 21st Amendment. And then you kind of saw the emergence of microbreweries coming into play. What this legislation, what the 21st Amendment did as well, which really hurt beer production, was it legalized home winemaking, but not home brewing, which is what the next slide will be discussing. Basically put a damper, and you know, we've seen what legalizing home brewing has done today since 1978. And imagine if that happened in 1933, where we would be today with craft beer and the relationship and dynamic of, you know, big macro global conglomerate beer production and, you know, your local down the street brew pub, and what that relationship would be and what that marketplace would look like now would be totally different. You know, 1970s, a lot of the emergence of craft beer started occurring. So you had Fred Eckhart release his book on lager beers, Brian Birch, both of which sat on the HA governing committee for quite some time, brewing quality beers. Maltos Falcons were formed in Southern California. You had Anchor Steam opening up in California as well, which was really one of the first, if not the first, craft brewery of its kind back in the 1970s. And then you had, in 1978, it was finally federally legalized. President Carter really gets a lot of credit for this. It was primarily driven by Alan Cranston, who was senator and lived in Southern California, as well as William Steiger. Steiger was alive when it passed, but was not alive when it went into effect. But Alan Cranston was really the primary engine behind legalizing home brewing. It was passed in an omnibus bill at the end of 1978 and went into effect in early 1979. Right as that passed Congress, that's when Charlie Papazian and Charlie Mattson founded the American Homebrewers Association in Boulder, Colorado, and started publishing Zymergy magazine, which is still published today, as I mentioned. since then, as you can see on the far left there, 1979, 300 members. You had a lot of growth up until the mid 1990s. You kind of had that craft brewing initial bust. Membership dropped, and then really at the time of the financial crisis in 2007, 2008, membership started growing substantially up until about 2016, 2017, when things have leveled off. We've seen a slight dip back down to around 42,000 members, but that's huge growth from 2005, I guess, down what I have below there to 2014. And then so keeping up with that kind of membership growth, growing certain programs and growing our conference to, a little tiny thing happening in Boulder and Denver to then traveling around the country at convention centers is kind of when all that happened in 2005 to 2014. And so we've seen some relation with economic turndown and interest in homebrewing. People have more time on their hands. They're looking for some sort of outlet, whether that's creative or mental, or just like looking for something to do. They're looking for community at a time when they no longer are going into an office or something like that. So that's what we attribute it to. I would be remiss if I didn't say that huge growth in membership has caused a lot of growth in the craft brewing industry as well. If you look at a graph of the amount of breweries in the U.S. during that 2005. Oh, Brian. Yeah.
this is very interesting to me, and I'm just curious, have you seen an increase in membership with the COVID-19 going on? What's the results so far in 2020?
Good question. Not really anything that I would say that we're growing, but I would like to see what it looks like in a year, I think. I think there's going to be a slight kind of delay on membership growth and any kind of economic downturn. I think this is also I don't really know how this is going to play out. The COVID-19, the pandemic, layoffs, the job market going into 2021. It would be something that I think we are going to be looking at what membership looks like at the end of the year. Is there going to be membership uptick come November and December, colder months, socializing goes down as far as going outside and, going on summer and vacations. School is now in session for now. And that's a good question. I don't have a good answer for you other than that we haven't seen a huge uptick in membership yet, but optimistic that we'll get more people into the hobby and connected with our association and our membership and the community at large. So I guess my follow-up would be, have you guys seen any uptick in membership based on having to do virtual events like this instead of in-person meetings? I've heard from a lot of clubs where I've done this sort of presentation that, they had great participation in the earlier months, and it's kind of dropped and leveled off, and it's been more difficult to keep people engaged over time. But again, I'd be interested to know what it looks like in the fall when people are traveling less usually, or winter.
So our membership has stayed flat this year. We're still, I think, at 72.
Okay.
Our participation online has been less. We unofficially have been tracking it. As we started out with the quarantine, people were stuck at home completely, and so I think we're getting a better turnout than what we are now. Today it looks like we've got 25 to 30 people that joined, whereas our in-persons we were getting closer to 50.
Wow. Yeah. Again, something that I'm curious to keep an eye on going again into those fall and winter months.
So
But I'm glad to hear membership's at least flat and hasn't been declining.
I actually kind of see it from a different perspective because I own one of the homebrew stores in the area.
Okay.
And I've seen a big uptick in homebrewers, but I'm guessing it's because breweries and bars and stuff are closed. But I've actually over the last probably 2 or 3 months I've sold a few American Homebrewer Association memberships, and I've only sold one in the past year, but I've sold about 2 or 3 in the last 3 months. So
Cool.
I don't know if that's because of COVID or I don't know why, but I've noticed that.
All right. What shop?
Carolina Brew Supply
Okay. Cool.
in Rock Hill, South Carolina.
I mean, really, a lot of it's going to be anecdotal. I think it's going to vary from region to region. But we did a calling campaign back in April and May to all the shops in the U.S. Hopefully, we talked to you on the phone, but we might have left you a message. And a lot of shop owners were telling us that they've seen a huge uptick in customers. They were seeing customers they hadn't seen in over 5 years. A lot of sales were up or at least flat. They were a little concerned on what the trend would be longer term. Like, are people just stocking up for the shutdown or for quarantine, or are they actually getting back into the hobby again for foreseeable future? So time will tell. I wish I had a crystal ball, and I wish the crystal ball would tell me positive, great things, but unfortunately I don't. And it's just something that we continue to look at and positively push to get people into the hobby. So that's great that you're getting good business through your shop, though.
Hey, John, I'm Tom. I'm the membership guy for Carolina Brewmasters, and my thanks to the Upper Palmetto folks for inviting us to join you tonight, and especially listening to Chase and you, John. Our membership is, I'll say, roughly on par from last year. We reset back to zero on January 1st, like most clubs. And our membership is about the same as it was about this point last year. Most of our folks quit renewing their membership once it gets to August or September, because beginning October 1st, if they join then they get the last 3 months of the current year plus all of the next year. So it's 15 months for the price of 12. So I'd imagine we'll see a little bit of an uptick for 2020. And the real test will be for 2021 to see what our membership is. Really, all homebrew clubs, much like what you were saying.
Yeah, and any ideas or good ideas on how to make sure that we can support folks joining their local clubs and supporting that membership and tying it together? I mean, an obvious one, and what's hard about it right now is you can't get together in person, but the club insurance premium reimbursement program that we have, it's obvious, it helps both the club out and us out, but I've had a lot of clubs reach out to me, and actually we had pretty good enrollment. I was really surprised with the amount of clubs that still enrolled this year, but it was definitely less than last year, and I wasn't surprised by that because a lot of clubs were just saying we don't know what in-person membership is or in-person meetings are gonna look like. We would rather save the money right now and enroll at a later time, whether that's the 9 or 6 month policy. So that was at least one indicator of many where, we might be seeing clubs struggling a little bit with membership. I don't think it's anything dire that we need to be super worried about, but long-term health, you want to be always growing your membership and have healthy engagement, and not being able to get together in person makes that really challenging right now, because we're all kind of trying to figure out what are the best ways to do that. This is one way.
Hey, John.
Yeah.
One, I'll throw a recommendation out. I don't know what the cost would be, but all of us clubs are having to go out and buy our own versions of this virtual meeting. So Upseas is spending $15 a month for Zoom. I don't know with your buying power if there's a way to do an enterprise sort of deal for you guys to pass that on down for the virtual meetings. Just food for thought.
That's a great idea, and something that we could leverage just based on the volume of clubs doing this right now, and our relationships with platforms based on whether it's the virtual conference or things that have been done on our professional side, the Brewers Association professional division. So good idea. I'll definitely pass that along. Thanks, Brad.
I know one thing that we're going to try in 2021 is make a much bigger deal about who among our membership is also an AHA member, actually putting it on our name badges. So we'll be able to visually see those who have joined the AHA, and that, I think that speaks volumes for, just supporting the AHA. Plus the benefits that you've already mentioned, it's huge. It's hard. Why would you not want to join?
Yeah, I agree with you. One thing we're doing is we're kind of going to be doubling down, or expanding our content, and our not just base level content, but also more kind of technical content, and bringing that to our membership in new and exciting ways, whether it's video or seminars or something like that. So I'm excited for what we're going to be doing, and appreciate the push by you guys or both clubs for it. So thank you. Yeah, I can move on if unless you guys have anything else you want to throw out. Again, if you get an idea, definitely, or have a question, definitely just raise your hand. Cool. All right. Homebrewer population, that would be us. There are over 1 million of us that make beer at our house based on various surveys that we've done with internally and with third-party vendors. And based on that and a few other things, our chief economist, Bart Watson, who works on the BA professional side, has estimated that our economic impact, which is usually about 5 to 10 gallons at a time, and this also includes things like traveling, hotel, beer tourism when traveling to a homebrewing event or competition, catering for a homebrewing event, anything to do with the event or with homebrewing. Our impact is $750 million, and that's a lot. It's a lot of money. So although we're making small batches at a time relative to what professionals are making, we're still significant. And that's really encouraging and useful to talk about usually to state and local officials about, whether we want to be bringing HomebrewCon to a city or, helping pass certain legislation in a state. It's just useful to have this sort of information that really, economic impact is a buzzword that state legislatures like to hear. And it's useful for you guys to know like what we do as a whole. There are about 600 homebrew retailers in the U.S. currently. That is down from the height of the 817 based on our database back in 2016 or 15. I think it's 2016. But again, I think you saw a large opening of retailers kind of when that membership spike was happening. And now it's kind of in a correction phase based on people adjusting to what is working well and what's not working well as far as a business strategy standpoint is concerned. There are a lot of, just because we've had a lot of closings in the last few years doesn't mean there aren't homebrew shops doing really well out there. and the ones that are doing well, really well, are thriving, I think. Someone post a question, maybe. I don't want to miss it.
Paul Dammit asked.
Oh yeah, but yeah, that's quick, easy math for you. And I guess one thing to say is that's current membership, so that's not to say who might have been a member but has since lapsed or has not renewed for a variety of reasons. The biggest one would be they forgot was like 30% of people's reasons why they weren't a member currently. So, fix with that was like offering people to opt in to auto renew, whether it's annual or monthly. So that the monthly was just put in 2 months ago, and the annual was put in a year ago. So now we'll be hitting that first annual renewal policy, auto renew policy. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out over, from now moving forward. But great point. It was the first thing that we all thought of when we saw that number, and try to continue to chip away at it. But we feel like we can grow membership to be more representative of that 1.1 million for sure. So what kind of fueled the growth of homebrewing at various stages? You have changes within homebrewing, so better access to techniques and ingredients and equipment and knowledge, whether that's from a professional brewer down the street or access to books via online or just forums or seminars, conferences, things of that nature. Social changes, people wanting to create their own product, and then changes in demographics. So a lot of, I'd say the vast amount of our membership skews a little older, older being older than 35. And, then they have some disposable income and they want to get into something that, that they might not have otherwise tried before. And between those all those things, you have this kind of growth in homebrewing over the last 15 years or so. As I mentioned, the quality and variety of ingredients have gone way up. Anyone who, obviously I was not around then, but anyone who was homebrewing in the 80s and early 90s was using probably malt extract. Anyone who did all grain, you'd probably be wowed about and ask a million and one questions on how they were getting it and how they were doing it. Now you have such a variety of products and the quality is so high on all four major ingredients that you're putting in your beer. You can make professional grade beer at your house at this point, based on ingredients and on the information that you can absorb, whether it's books or online or by podcasts or magazines, as well as, I had something in here, I thought I did at least, but on equipment, and it might be later down in the slideshow, but now you have electrical brewing equipment that you can use in your house, much more convenient than pulling out turkey fryers, firing up propane, and going and lifting heavy equipment and transferring liquid around. So things have really, technology has introduced itself into homebrewing, where it was otherwise a lot of manual labor. And even back when a lot of commercial brewers were starting, they were repurposing a lot of dairy equipment from dairy farms. Sierra Nevada is famous. They were at, I think, at GABF last year. They brought in their old first system into the festival hall and Colorado Convention Center and displayed their first brewing system, which was all repurposed dairy equipment. And now if you went to a craft brewers conference or some other brewing conference that was showcasing, had an expo hall with new brewing equipment, the amount of shiny new stuff and the engineering behind it is amazing. So it's come a long way. A lot of DIY kind of trends have popped up over the last 20 to 30 years. People wanting to, you know, feel like they've built something themselves and have created this thing that they enjoy. And one of those would be beer, as well as equipment that you might use in beer. The idea of local, this whole neo-localism movement, whether it's, you know, creating a homebrew shop in the area and then creating a community around that and supporting that business, that community supports that business, which, you know, keeps money and jobs in the area rather than it going off somewhere else out of state or out of country. So you have all these different things kind of playing out to create a great environment for a growing hobby. Which transitions me into retail sales. I have information up to 2017. I wasn't able to pull 2018 and 19 data yet, but, you know, you can see here 2009 to 2014 had some sort of growth. You know, 2009 to 2013, double-digit growth every year. I would correlate that with the growth in AHA membership. It was just something that it was a hobby that a lot of people were getting into, and started cooling off a little bit in 2013 and a lot in 2014, and then had really kind of leveled out more or less in 2015 through 17. The numbers I know of in 2018 and 19 are still low single digits. I just can't remember around what. It's somewhere between 1% and 5%. And this varies based on the type of store that you're going to have, whether it's a brick and mortar that's been open for over 5 years that does no online sales, or a store that's less than 5 years old that primarily does online retail sales. So there's, within all these numbers, there's a whole subset of numbers, but this is the general trend in retail sales over from 2009 to 2017. So quick analysis of that, I kind of went over a little bit. 25% were greater or less than, or greater or equal to 10% growth in 2017, and it was 29% in 2016. 17% greater or equal to 20% growth in 2017. And 58% experienced a decline in 2017. As you can, you know, that number went up in 2017 versus 2016. And then of retailers reporting a decline, the average 10% decrease it was an average of 10% decrease in sales. Just substantial for a retailer when your margins are low and you're trying to make ends meet. So again, that was a lot of that growth that was in that previous slide was during that growth of overall retail count up to 817. Now that we've gone back down to a little over 600 retailers in the US, that overall decline average is less than 10%. So this is a question from our annual shop survey. I can't remember your name, who owns the shop, but I don't know if you've filled this out or not, Anthony. And you've probably seen these numbers if you have. I think we share them with all our respondents. You can see that decrease in number of shops in your area has gone up over the years from 2014 to today. That's just another reflection of that number of 817 going down to just above 600. But you also have, you know, an increase in shops in some areas in a quarter of the survey respondents, and then a lot of the area has stayed the same. So over half of the, I got a comment. Good question, Dean. And yes, I do. I think, you know, they've had plans to open a homebrew. All right, so the question is, do you think Amazon is being a big player in these numbers? And I think they've changed the game for everything. retail, and they've opened up their own kind of homebrew marketplace. It didn't get as much traction as we thought it was going to get, but they don't deliver the same. A good point. And that's where a local retail shop, a local homebrew supply shop can really differentiate itself. It's going to have really fresh ingredients. You're going to have a knowledge base in there that you can't get on an online experience. You can get it same day. And you're going to have fresh, new, interesting, small brand, maybe a new brand, maybe something experimental come through those shops more likely, and than Amazon, for example. Amazon's going to be looking for big players to be part of their marketplace. That being said, I think initially we thought Amazon was going to take more than they have based on them opening up this homebrew marketplace, and we thought they were going to launch it in beginning of 2018, and it didn't really. I haven't seen it really promoted a whole lot on Amazon since I found out about it. I don't know if any of you have even seen it, but it is there. But I think just the overall psychology of shopping, it's changed, maybe how people buy some things for homebrewing. Maybe not ingredients, but maybe equipment, maybe small things like kegs or attachments to kegs. Those are pretty pricey buys that you would otherwise get at a homebrew supply shop, at Anthony's supply shop, that someone might now look on Amazon for because they're just used to searching online for something that they want, and they think that is the place where they get the best deal. So it definitely has played a role in hurting local businesses, and it's not just the homebrewing businesses that have suffered from that. It's kind of the same idea when Walmart would come in somewhere and it would, hurt any kind of local business happening in the area that had any general competition with Walmart. So we'll see how it plays out, continues to play out, but it's definitely had an impact for sure. Good question. This was the slide I was mentioning earlier with the growth in craft breweries. As you can see, this is 2006, 2008 is when AHA membership really started picking up. You're going to obviously have a slight delay in brewery openings based on that, get people into the hobby and get them brewing for a little bit. And then they're thinking, wow, I could open up a brewery in my area or in some other area. And then you kind of get this massive expansion of breweries in the US over the last decade. Now over 8,300 breweries in the US. So, even since this number of 2017, 6,300, it's grown 2,000 more since then. So it hasn't slowed down. Even the trends moving forward during the pandemic, we haven't seen the closings we thought we were going to see. We'll keep an eye on what that looks like in the fall and winter when craft sales and just beer sales in general kind of go into a hibernation effect. But we also haven't seen a whole lot of decrease in breweries and planning as well. We keep track of that in our database, and we continue to see pretty strong interest in people opening breweries that are not yet open yet. So again, time will tell. We'll see what they want to do come what the marketplace might look like. A lot of that kind of grim outlook that we had in April has been stymied by temporary legislative and regulation changes in states, whether it's direct-to-consumer, D2C, or to-go sales that otherwise weren't permissible. And now what it really gave was breweries an opportunity to show that they can function and responsibly under things like direct-to-consumer, and the sky doesn't fall. And there are a lot of states pushing to keep that sort of thing permanent. look at this question real quick from Dean. Do those bought out by the big boys count in these numbers? They do not. I mean, our numbers still count 99% of breweries in the US. But no, these are small and independent breweries that would fit the Brewers Association's definition of small and independent. So that would be under 6 million barrels and not owned by another international brewery by more than 25%, and also holds a TTB license. So these are not counting, a brewery in planning, for example. Good question. And then you have, I mentioned kind of equipment earlier. You have brew in a bag, which has been a newer trend in the last 5 to 7 years. Condenses the overall equipment needed. Honestly, I think it lowers the barrier and intimidation factor for a lot of people that might want to get interested into the hobby, as well as small batch brewing. So not needing to make 5 or 10 gallons, you can make 2 gallons of beer. Obviously, it goes a lot quicker, so you're gonna have to brew more. But it allows people who live in an apartment maybe, or some small area, or don't have a whole lot of disposable income, to get into the hobby without having to put a ton of investment into it and still enjoy the craft of it. So while it's not the norm, while it hasn't been the norm to do brew in the bag or small batch, I think it's great for the hobby and to get new people into it. So that's just kind of another way to attract newcomers, right? Mention the new equipment. This is a variety of new equipment that some of you probably recognize, whether it's Pico Brew or Grainfather or Robo Brew, or Anvil just came out with their own brew in the bag system. You have this kind of high-end market as well of like professional grade equipment made for the home. So something like this fermenter right here, you could not buy that 10 or 15 years ago, and now you can. And it just allows you to really go down a rabbit hole deeper and deeper as far as how much you want to put into the hobby and what you want to do at your house. I'm sure there are club members who have built out plenty of spaces in their houses that are their brewing spaces, whether it's a basement or a garage or a shed. And it's kind of keeping up with the Joneses as far as I put this bar in, I built this kegerator, I got this new piece of shiny stainless steel fermenter equipment. So it's kind of going both ways. I think the brew in the bag, again, now that you have less costly products other than the Grainfather for that type of brewing, that's a nice easy pitch to get someone into the hobby. You can be like, all you really have to buy is this for all grain, and then obviously something you ferment it in, but you don't have to buy the mash tun with the hot liquor tank or lauter kettle, and then or build out some sort of mash tun converted from a cooler like many of us have had to do in the past. So again, technology is just moving itself into this hobby. So some key points that I went over was rapid growth back in the mid 2000s to mid 2010s. We've had a flattened kind of market at retail in the last 4 or 5 years. 5 minutes to go. Great. Thank you. I think I'm close. I think I'm nailing the timing here. Growing economy, slowing of home brewing, potentially. What are the implications of increasing the number of craft breweries? Now you can walk down the street and sometimes you can hit 5 breweries in a block. Does that hurt how much you're going to be brewing or getting people into the hobby because they have this greater access to products? The technology and the future of home brewing, I'm optimistic about it. I think there'll always be a need for it and always a desire as a cool kind of creative outlook or what's the word I'm looking for? Creative avenue. And then I'm going to breeze through some stuff here so I can get to the website for you guys. We do a lot of promote and protect home brewings. We do a lot of media outreach throughout the year with major publications, as well as having our website, which I'm going to get to in momentarily to highlight some things for you guys who might not be aware of what we have to offer on there. We've developed a plan for diversity, equity, and inclusion with our diversity subcommittee on the AHA, as well as our diversity committee on the Brewers Association. And currently have rolled that out since 2018 and working on amping that up over the next year as well. It's legal in all 50 states. I don't want to spend too much time on that, but if any of you do have questions on it, happy to talk about it. There's still a lot of legislative battles going on out there that don't necessarily, just because it's legal in all 50 states doesn't mean that there's legislation written in all 50 states about homebrewing. So there's some states that just don't have homebrewing on the books, but have adopted federal statute for the meantime. That creates a lot of ambiguity and can create a lot of problems for homebrewing as different interpretations arise based on overturn of personnel within certain agencies and legislatures. These are some of the federal affairs things that I mentioned earlier that I work on in DC with our federal affairs director. We do have a competition that we do with congressional staff, as well as do congressional visits with those on Capitol Hill and serve homebrew.
Did you ever brew with Obama?
I did not. I started working at, I worked at the AHA. I got hired at the end of 2014 and really beginning of 2015, and didn't take over legislative affairs until 2017. But yeah, never brewed with him. I've brewed with some chiefs of staff on Capitol Hill and have given out some awards to some senators and representatives, which has been really fun. Dan Sullivan was one of them, senator from Alaska, as well as Representative DeFazio out of Oregon. Monthly membership, I mentioned, was launched. It's just a different way to go about membership. Maybe you're unsure about it, so you can go into, but did they make good beer? You know, some of it was okay, Brian. Some of it really needed some improvement. And we made sure that we gave them lots of feedback on how to do that. And they loved it. They loved the honesty about it and kind of learning about the whole process of a competition and the feedback and how to become a judge and what goes into judging beer. It's not just whether you like it or not. I think I'm done with the presentation. So I could go to the website if I have time. Do I have time?
Yeah, we're pretty much on time, John.
Okay.
I don't know if you would be prepared to come back and go to the website in another month.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't think it would. I can come back and do like a 15-minute kind of run through of where things are and where to find certain resources and information.
Yeah,
would be really beneficial
that would be good. We normally allocate about an hour 45 or an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And we've got a couple of things to discuss within the club as well. So if you wouldn't mind, if you'd be so kind, I'll reach out to you, and we can go over the website, perhaps at your convenience.
Yeah. Whenever your next meeting is, I can just come in for 15 or 20 minutes. I think that would be more beneficial than me trying to pick two things right now. And someone might have another question on where something might live in here. And yeah, that's totally cool with me.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I learned a lot tonight, to say the very least. That was really informative, from a statistical perspective, particularly, how the the trend has dropped off quite a lot with the introduction of a lot of new breweries.
Yeah.
So people having that huge variety of beer available to them, which perhaps drove some of the negative growth in the the stores and the brewers.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something we've looked at. It's hard to measure exactly. But it's, it's again, one of many indicators that we're going to be looking at as we go through this. And we're never going to have a definitive answer on a lot of questions, but you can pull in data to help try to explain something. So,
right.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see membership at the club and at the AHA level over the next year, how it plays out.
Right, John. Thank you very much indeed for the time. And I know you're on the opposite side of the coast, so thanks for organising this.